So we're going to talk about giving this morning. And when we talk about giving, people that are up here have really developed a lifestyle of giving. It's, a lot of times when we talk about giving, we talk about money, but it really is much more than that. These are people that have really given of their lives to the ministry, and even greater than that, to the work of Jesus Christ himself. And so we just thought, let's just have them come up and just share a little bit this morning. So the first thing we're going to do, I'll go from, I should do ladies first, I guess. We'll do ladies first. Let's talk a little bit, not ladies, not. Okay, the volunteer 20-something is going to go first. Yeah, there we go. And so just a brief testimony of how they came to Christ. So we'll just do that this morning, and then we'll get started with some other questions.
Okay, so good morning. So I've given a part of my testimony before. So grew up in the church, but just going to church, not having a relationship with God. Once I became an adult and a mom, I still kind of just went through the motions of going to church, didn't really focus on like changing my life and being a representation of him. And so my testimony is like the condition of my heart. Like my heart was so hardened. I was such a nasty person, and people who know me now have a really hard time believing that, but that's what God does, right? He changes us from the inside out. So the condition of my heart was such that I had a lot of pride, I had a lot of anger, I felt a lot of resentment, and those things don't really exist in my life anymore. I just believe that he absolutely renewed my mind, my body, and my spirit. And so that's just a little bit of Adrian. You'll hear more throughout this panel with questions. So, Miss Judy.
Is that on?
No. It should have the lights.
No, it didn't. This is really a really amazing time for me to be able to do this. With the lung condition, I've been asking people to pray that I will have a voice. So I'm so honored to be here. And I will cry. Just who I am. I was a person searching, and I searched all New Age everything. I had New Age, all the implements, and went to different things searching for God. And through a very long and amazing story, God got a hold of me, and it has been a life change. So I think I went from a person who had no purpose, met Jesus, and have a purpose. And part of that purpose is giving.
Amen.
Amen. So, Billy, we heard from you before on different testimonies, and just great testimonies, but maybe just a little background. It's like, how did you come to know the Lord? You grew up in a church, didn't you?
Yeah, I was born in a church. My grandfather was helped build the church, and my mom was a church organist, and my mom and dad met in church, and I hit the church doors probably, first thing. So I grew up listening to Grandpa and my mom and my dad and the others telling me about, Jesus. And when I got old enough to figure out what the deal was, one day they gave an altar call, and I came down and accepted the Lord because I had a revelation of, oh, wait a minute. This is me here. Mm-hmm. And I was 5 years old, so my testimony is I was 5 years old.
Wow.
The fireworks came later, but that's how I came to the Lord.
That's good. Gerald,
Well,
we've heard from Gerald before, but go ahead, Gerald.
I grew up in the church, and I came from a church where they preached a lot of hell. So I used to get saved about every month. And I did that as they'd preach a scary sermon, I'd come down. But my brother, Ernie, when I was about 12 years old, invited me to his church, which was a Spirit-filled church. And I got baptized in the Holy Spirit about 12 years, and that was a pivotal point for me.
You were baptized in the Spirit at 12?
At 12, yeah.
Wow, that's okay.
And that was the beginning.
Well, that's good. So you guys have all heard my testimonies off and on. I was a farm kid. Thought I was going to farm all my life, and long story short, so it's like I accepted Christ when I was fourth grade. I remember walking down front, the Baptist at the end of the at the end of the service, the altar call, and the week before I told my mom, I said, every time the pastor gives an altar call, I just feel funny. I just feel there's something going on inside. And she said, that's Jesus. He wants to come into your heart. And I said, okay. And so I remember being in the second row, and so the pastor, I don't remember anything the pastor said. I was so nervous. It's like I didn't want to come forward. And so I finally did. And I'm telling you that it was only, like I said, only 2 rows, but I'm telling you it was the longest 2 rows. I think those 2 rows seemed to be a quarter of a mile long because it just seemed so long walking up there. And then as soon as I walked up there, it's like, oh, I don't want to cry. And of course, a fourth grade boy, they don't want to cry. And what did I do? Just start crying. And all these ladies came forward. My mom came forward, and you're crying. And so anyway, I didn't really understand fully. I just knew that Jesus had come into my heart. I didn't know exactly what all that meant, but he came into my heart, and that's really when he became real to me. So, all right, so we talk about, really what we're talking about is Thanksgiving and giving, and so I want to jump right into it. It's like, so giving, it's like when did giving really become real to you, or really became a significant part of what you wanted to do in your walk with Christ? Anybody? Go jump in.
I'll go. As I was thinking about this panel and I was kind of praying about it, he revealed so many things to me because he's so funny. It became real to me when I came here. When I came to CrossRoad, that's when it became real to me. But it wasn't like fireworks and all, this crazy thing. It was very simple. I started to give because I wanted my girls to be comfortable here. It wasn't even about me yet. It wasn't even about me being aware of what he was doing in my heart. It was more about my girls were getting involved. I was getting involved. They loved to come to church. They loved to be in youth group. And so I was just like, oh, well, I want them to want to come here, so the lights got to be on, and there needs to be water running. So I guess I'll start giving. It was very simple.
So it was kind of a practical thing. It's like, well, somebody's got to give. Somebody's got to make sure.
And if I'm bringing these 2 people here and they're going to be involved, then I need to do my part.
Oh, okay. So when did it begin to change into something else?
It began to change into something else when I realized the significance. I see giving as worship. And anybody who knows me knows that I love to worship in my car, in my room, at church, at work. I worship. And then once it turned into an act of obedience for me, then it was extremely profound. The reverence to God that I feel that I'm expressing to him through my giving, whether it's finances or my time, is overwhelming to me. I don't think other than him and my heart being changed, I would do as much as I do.
Wow, that's really good. Judy, tell us about yours. You didn't suddenly decide to give, and
Must just be me. Y'all don't want to hear the microphone that doesn't work. Yes. I didn't get to Christ until I was 48 years old. Now that's really getting down there. And prior to that, I was part of a family that I knew very little, if anything, about giving. I think my dad gave to the good old boys, who were part of his business stuff. But as far as really giving money, reaching out to anybody, it wasn't a part of my life. So I became a Christian, and then God put me in the ministry, funny, it's called Ministry of Money. And it has been over 20 years journey of learning how to give, how to hear the Spirit, and it's been completely pervasive in my life. It has been something I find giving to be incredibly wonderful, and it can have amazing pitfalls. So it has been an ongoing where I just began slowly, because what do you do? I don't know what to do. And then it's been God training me through other people over a period of time to just be more and more comfortable and do it more often.
Now, this is powerful. Both of you have said something, and it's interesting to me, is like both of you talked about a process. It wasn't just a suddenly, today's the day. Gerald, you shook your head. What you want to jump in with that? It's like,
No, I was reading in the scriptures, kind of preparing for today, and there was a scripture I came across that I just never read it this way. It was 2 Corinthians 8:10, and it says generosity begins with a desire. And when I was growing up, we grew up in church, but my dad was a drunk, so we were really a dysfunctional family. But my dad was very generous, and he was a giver, and he would give you the shirt off his back, and he gave to everyone. So we grew up with watching my father kind of pass on this generous heart. And so I think we started there. And then over time, so I was a generous giver before I was ever a generous giver for kingdom things. But it was a desire, and I liked helping people, and I liked doing things for people. Then later, I learned how to become a kingdom giver. But that didn't start till probably in my 30s.
so it really is a process. Now, Billy, you've had some pretty significant events, or I guess, I don't know whether events is the right word, but experiences in giving and obedience to giving. So you just tell us a little bit about the process of you walking into really becoming a giver.
Well,
is it working?
Yeah, I think
There
so.
we go. Okay.
Along with growing up in the church, my grandfather would constantly talk to me about his experiences of being a tither, and actually conduct experiments with, this row of strawberries, I'm going to give 10% to the church, and this row of strawberries I'm going to keep for myself. I mean, he experimented with this. He didn't grow up giving, but in his adulthood, when he came to the Lord, he became a rabid giver. It was his, he would do experiments. So I grew up listening to this. When he would give me a dime when we walk into church, says, here's a dime for the offering, So I would always throw it in. And then when I started working as a kid for money, I just automatically start tithing. My first dime I earned, I would put a penny in the offering. So I never had a real big aha moment about giving. It was pure obedience. It wasn't until the next level of giving that was when I really had the aha moment about what the next level is. I can tell you a little bit about that.
I was going to say, you kind of intrigued us now. It's like the next level. It's like, okay, well, we're done with that. It's like, no, now we want to know. It's like, so tell us about the next level.
Well, tithing opens the windows of heaven. So you have a clear communication with God. You're no longer living in God's mercy, trying to keep you in the game long enough for you to get a revelation of what it is to work in the kingdom. But when you're in God's grace, then everything just flows. You're given grace day by day. And he keeps giving you these little things that brings you to the end of yourself, to see if you're really going to do this or not. And not because he wants to see if you're going to do it. It's because he has more to give you. But in this dimension, ever since the flood of Noah, it's been seed, time, and harvest. And so you've got to give this seed, not because God wants it, but because he wants to add a couple zeros to it. So because I was a tither my whole life, when I got out of high school, I would, of course, give more and more, but I read this little book. It's about this thin by Oral Roberts, and it was called Seed, Time, and Harvest.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yeah, we both know about that one, huh? Yeah.
That's good.
And so as soon as I closed the book, God said, okay, I want you to give everything you got. How much you got? Well, I just graduated from high school, and I was going to go into Bible college, and all I had was $90, which isn't going to do anything. Didn't have a job or anything. I said, I had $90. He said, okay, give that. And he told me where to give it. It was everything I had. I mean, okay. And then when I got home from my 2-week trip, I had a job waiting for me, which got me enough money to go through the first semester of college. That was the first time I gave everything. And I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute, this is a whole different ball game here. And so then he'd keep testing you, okay, give this. And every time it would be another zero, another 2 zeros on the end of your bank account. But 2 or 3 questions down, I can give you some more.
You want to give some more later on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to hog the show.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Go ahead.
It's intriguing with the test. Since God already knows what you're going to do before you do it, is the test for him or is it for you?
Oh, it's definitely for you.
So you're finding out that it works.
You're being conformed into the image of his dear son, and the only way to do that is through experience.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I know, and I'm kind of want to go back to Billy, but we'll wait. We'll wait on that one. That's like, because then I got Judy ready to jump in. Okay. Oh, this is good. Are you enjoying this? I really kind of enjoy just hearing the different testimonies because each one of you have come really to giving in a different way. I mean, all of us have. We've all come to in a different way. And yet God has met us each at our point of need. Okay, so we talked about kind of when giving became important to you. Did I get everybody? When it came? All right, so what was your fears? Tell me about maybe some fears that you faced in giving.
Oh, brother. The first time I heard a large amount to give to a particular ministry, it was like, what? Talk about the zeros, they're a little frightening, aren't they? And my practice is, if I hear that, I do not just act on it right away. So I will take it to prayer. But there are other fears that people will take advantage of you or your generosity. And so sometimes it's caused me to be fairly cautious and kind of introverted about it. So.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good. Adrian, what were some of the fears that you had?
I can think a fear in particular, which is, it's always kind of on my mind, is so when I first came here and I started giving, I was married at the time, but my husband wasn't a believer. So I had this desire to give, and as the desire got stronger and stronger because he was healing my heart, I had fear of what my husband would think. So I kind of would be sneaky about it, if for lack of a better word, I was sneaky about it because I wanted to be obedient, but I also didn't want to cause friction at home. And so what I ended up doing is I just started giving. I just started tithing. The Lord just gave me peace about it. I didn't worry about it. And then, so funny, I was thinking about this last night. I remember the first time when a whole year had gone by of me giving, we went to do our taxes. And we're sitting there, and I had gotten my printout from church, to show what I had given, and the number got added up. And I remember just being like, oh my, this is very clear and in writing, what I've given. And so as the tax guy is saying, oh, okay, well, we have these things to put in. My husband's like, you gave a lot of money. And I was like, yeah. And then because God is so good, he goes, well, thank goodness, because if it wasn't for that, we'd be in a hole. And so I just remember being like, oh, like, thank you, Lord. Like, we're not in a hole because I gave this money. So there was no friction at home because of it. There was actual, like, thankfulness behind it. So, yeah.
That's good. That's good. Gerald, you do the fears. Some of the fears that you had, anything?
You know, I've given, there's, I think, different stages. Like, I think when we gave when we were broke, that's a different kind of giving than when we've given when we've had the kind of empty the checking account moment. You know, there was a time when God put in our heart to give a whopper. And, you know, you're just, and I've given, and there's been times when I've given to people and God's had to correct me and say, don't quit trying to be everybody's provider. You've ruined this thing I was putting them through. So I've really learned, I think, to take kind of from...
Explain that a little bit.
Well, you know, when when I'm broke, I'll just start with that one first. That was a fear thing. And that's a fear thing that you have to sit and look at the Word, and you have to say, can God's Word work even under these circumstances, or have I created the exception where God doesn't work under this particular circumstance? So that's a fear thing that I had to battle through. Because Leslie and I are we're generous. We like helping people with time and money and just a lot of different things. And so a lot of times when there was I think a season in our life when maybe we were targets. I bet you we were targets, and people would come share their situations with us. And at first we would just, you know, it felt great to just, oh, well, let us solve your problem. Here's your rent check, or here's this, or here's that. And it felt good, but when God corrected me one time with this one family that we just kept on paying their rent every month, and they just weren't learning how to fish. We were giving them fish, so they had a poverty mind, and we were becoming their new provider. And God scolded me one time, and he said, these people were almost at the point where they were ready to trust me, and you came in there and blew it. And now they have to go through that whole lesson again. So it changed. It really changed. We realized sometimes we were giving out of disobedience just to be the hero, probably, because it felt good. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, so we've had that. And then there's times with the Whopper checks where, it's hard to build up money. So this is always a test that God has given me. If he told me to write everything, could I do it? Or there's been different things that he's given me, and then he's asked me to give it away. One was a watch that I wanted for years and years and years. And I had sold a company, and I went and bought it. And just a couple of weeks, I love that watch. When I used to fly, first it was my praise hand. then I would, in the airplane, I'd adjust the air conditioning. I love this thing. I was making special provision to take it up to heaven. I loved it. But I had told God, if I ever fall in love with something, instead of being in love with, don't let me fall in love with a thing. And don't let me fall in love with stuff. And so he challenged me, and he said,
So he took you up on that.
He'd give that away.
Yeah.
And I remember telling my wife, and she says, no, you've worked so hard for, and she said, I had just bought her a watch, and she says, give mine away.
Oh.
But it was to a guy. So I could, otherwise maybe I would have. But I remember that was a test, and there was another time. So that was a struggle. I didn't want to. And, I could have just went and bought another one. But I told God, you're going to, since you've asked me to give this up, somebody's going to have to give me this watch. And I'll never buy this watch. Somebody's going to have to give it to me. And years later, at my son's funeral, a guy walked up and gave me the watch.
That was a sign.
Yeah.
He's faithful.
Yeah.
He's faithful. Billy, tell us about like some of the fears that you faced.
Well, it would have to be one of those whoppers that would put the fear of God in my heart. I've got a distinct advantage of not being the sharpest knife in the drawer. So there is no plan B. You know, whatever God wants me to do, I'm
Wow.
okay, because I don't know any better. I certainly don't have a better plan, right? So I'm married, got 2 kids, we're living in a little trash trailer park where ours is the best place in the whole park, because we put a coat of paint on this old trailer and put up a white picket fence and planted grass, and it was like, here's the park, and then what the heck happened here? Something dropped out of outer space, right? But it was our desire that we were not going to be stuck.
Right.
And,
Sure.
and I had been specializing now for quite a few years in giving, and I would surround myself with books and tapes and TV. I'd come home from church and try to get over the poverty mentality of church by turning on Robert Schuller. I mean, I would just write copious notes. Everything, and every time I drove in the driveway, Satan would go, "You're never going to get your family out of here. You better stop paying your tithes, and you better start putting in the bank, because you're never getting your family out of here."
Wow.
Every time it went on for 2 years. No, 4 years. Huh.
So wait a minute. So I want you to go on with the story, but there's a mindset you're working on, and yet at the same time, it's almost like there's an intensity to the battle that you're facing.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Every day. And then we had, Marna's dad, of course, didn't grow up in the church, so he didn't understand why I would be giving the preacher all this money when I should be getting my family out of this. It just on and on and on. So 4 years into it, I'm in the shower, and God says, "How much you got in your checking account, your savings account?" $2,000. He said, "Well, that's not going to do the job, is it?" I said, "No." He said, "Okay, well, you're going to write a check, you're going to give it to this missionary in Brazil. No, and if you do this, then, it inquires." It was just that, boom. And I'm like, oh man, this is it. We are going to be completely flat broke it took us 4 years to get to $2,000, right? I mean, we didn't run up credit cards and we didn't buy stuff. It was hand-to-hand combat. So it took me about a day, maybe 2, to bring it up to Marna. And Marna said, "Well, if that's what God told you to do, then here's the checkbook." I'm like, what manner of woman is this, right? She has more faith than I do, because I'm like, oh man, all right, it's all or nothing. Write the check, we send it off, and of course nothing. So now we're in this trash trailer park, still doing the same thing that we're doing every day, building a life day by day, but now we're dead broke. And long story short, in 6 months, we had the entire amount given back to us with a 0 on the end of it.
Hallelujah. Wow.
Which was a down payment on a house, and then I was given a raise to make the mortgage payment. And that's how we got out of the park. So,
Wow.
That was my first, oh my God, this had better work.
Hey, did you know, were you looking to Scripture at the biblical promises? I mean, if you went to Oral Roberts, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So you knew there was a promise. How did you square that with, because I think there's a attitude in the church that we don't give to get. And I always thought, I knew you had to have the right mindset first, right? you had to have the right mindset.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you want to be blessed so you can be a blessing.
Right.
Okay, so if you start out with that mindset, then that's why they have those promises. But how did the scriptures come into play with this whole thing?
Well, by then I had full of scripture. Malachi chapter 3, the entire chapter of Malachi chapter 3 has to do with your relationship with God. And it's the only part of the Bible where God says, test me.
Yeah.
That's it. It's the only one place
The only
that
one.
he does
Amen.
it.
It's true.
Because it's so vital and central to your life. Everything revolves around money in this dimension. And before he had prepared me with, given everything I had maybe one or two times before, but it was never where it was an existential threat to my family if this thing didn't work. I mean, it was not just me anymore where I could just get another job or two. And, I have 2 little boys, a wife. I'm the sole provider. Marna's doing a great job raising our family. I'm the guy bringing in what money we had. And I knew this was it. Now, just because you're afraid doesn't mean you don't have faith. A big part of if God is telling you to do something is the fact that it just completely rattles you to the core of your being, and it won't go away. It just gets worse and worse. At least for me, that's how I can tell if it's God or not. And so, because I would never dream up something like this.
No.
And so, yeah.
Okay. So the scriptures, the promises of Malachi 3:10. I mean, it says, test me on this. See if I will not open up the floodgates. Yeah. I mean, that's this assurance that he's got this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that there's a devourer that has to be rebuked, and you can't rebuke that devourer.
And that's according to Malachi. You look at the scripture in Malachi. Yeah. And the
Only
Lord's the
he
one
can
that
rebuke the devourer.
Yeah, that was very good.
Yeah.
So, ladies, scriptures. Like the scriptures, I'm sure that there's in your process, the scriptures really take on more than just something you read on Sunday. They really became a part of your life. Am I right? So, can you explain that a little bit more? It's like what were there scriptures that stood out to you in the process of your giving?
I think for me, absolutely. I was a person who would read the word, but read it for sport, right? And then felt like, okay, well, I read my Bible today. So when I slowed down and I started to pay attention to what he was trying to get me to see and hear and learn, it opened my eyes to what was in front of me. And so one of my favorites, for now, because it might change, is Proverbs 3, I think it's like verse 9 through 12. And I can't quote it because I'm not as awesome as him. I have to open it up and read it. But it just talks about how, what you give will be given back to you. And not that we're doing it to get something back, but it's like, I'm his daughter. He promised, I want it.
Yeah.
And so because I'm his daughter and he promised it and I want it, I still have to be an active participant. I still have to be willing to do the things that he asks of me. I still have to be willing to take us that step of faith, even when it's uncomfortable, because I can't see down the road, but he can. And so being aware that the scripture and the word is living and alive, I just try to immerse myself in it in a slower way. I slowed down and I read it, and I see things it's almost like there's a spotlight on certain things, and I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm listening.
Oh, that's good. Judy, I know there's scriptures that have stood out to you that's encouraged you in your area of giving.
Actually, it's the one that's on the screen, but I'm going to be a renegade. I don't have these lovely stories that these fine folks have. My And I just wanted to make sure, over the 20 years, for me, it has been a process of finding out from God, I tell him, these are your resources, but what I need most of all from you is to tell me where they go. So for me, that's not a scripture, but it is something that has been honed. And so over the long haul, I have kind of developed a way within me, and I think it's kind of like the spotlight here. Like there'll be a situation, and I get the feeling, not a scripture, oh, I think this one's for me. So then I began to pray about that. And there's just a part of my body that when it's right, you know, my spirit goes, yep, that's right. And then oftentimes I give anonymously. I just find it's really exciting, and I do get things from it. So I have a phrase that maybe some people have heard me say, and that's yippee. When the giving is right, and when my heart is right, etc., there is an absolute yippee in my spirit that says, this is so right, and I experience tremendous joy. Now, all giving isn't a yippee. I will tell you that when I get to tithe, it's a yippee. I mean, it's just like Adrian saying, I want the lights on and the, you know, all that good stuff, and I absolutely adore this church. So, I don't know, I treasure the yippies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's my way God has, you know, kind of finally communicated. Okay, it's the sense here. I'm designating over here, and then you'll get that sense. And then you know, if it's right on, it's a yippee.
So you and I talked to some about this, and so this whole thing with the scripture where it talks about God loves a cheerful giver, you've really embraced that, and that's the greatest part of your, not just the greatest part of your testimony, but a big part of your testimony is just the sheer joy, the yippee, in being able to give.
I know, it's a rather strange thing. Okay, so you give by yippee? Yes, I have a yippee giving plan, which is not my plan, because these are not my resources.
Amen.
They aren't.
Amen.
So I'm trying to, you know, listen, and I used to give only at the end of the year when I didn't know Christ, and now it's an ongoing, and can I take a couple more seconds?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Yippee! Oh, excellent. I think that, at least for me, I have been guided through a very dear friend, Rose, to kind of help me understand where kind of are the categories that I'm called to give to. So one of them would be like food, the food bank. One of them would be a hand up and not out. So whether that would be the, you know, Los Angeles Mission or the Union Rescue Mission or church, that's important to me. And one that I've gotten very involved with is called New Life. And they are a radio program. They have phenomenal workshops. Mm-hmm. And the reason I give, or I hear so much to give to them, is because they reach so many people. So my giving helps them help others. And that's a major yippee. You know, I'll hear, okay, give another donation to New Life. I'm going, really? But it's where I'm called.
Mm-hmm. Really good. That's really, and one of the things that we talked about when Gerald and I talked about, it's like, who do we bring up here? We wanted to bring people up. So each one of you, they've each got a different way that they've really come to that experience of giving. God has given us different, not just experiences, but the joys. And it's amazing to me, again, this kind of a tapestry thing, how God works. That with each one of us, he's worked in a different way, but in a profound way and in a way that we can all understand. It's like, yeah, he's speaking my language, and he speaks each one of their languages. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, Billy, what was the book that you read from, that you talked about you read early? What was the name of it?
Oh, Roberts?
Yeah.
What was Seed Time and Harvest.
Okay. So if I remember that book right, this is a God law that he's talking about. Okay, this is just God, there's gravity, there's all kinds of laws, and this is a spiritual law that God has put in place. And I was listening to somebody talk the other day about an apple tree in an orchard. And they said, how many apples are on the typical apple tree? And there's a certain average that every apple tree has. But then they looked, and so this is the law of seed harvest at work. And then they looked inside the apple, and they opened it up, and they said, how many seeds are in the average apple? And there was a number, I forget what the number was. But then from that, they said, how many orchards are from each apple? It's the same creator that created this system for multiplication, that created this system. And, it really depends on if you have a poverty mindset or a rich mindset or a wealth mindset. They're different things. And we don't have time to get into what those are today.
Very true.
But if you're thinking, if your heart is right, your heart has to be right in giving, because that's where it starts. Then you're not afraid to get because you want to give more. It's the same reason why if you're investing your portfolio and you want compounded interest, I don't know any investor that says, nope, I don't want the compounded interest. I don't want anything back because, I just would feel bad if I got something back. Well, that's a financial principle that operates in our world. There is a spiritual compounded multiplication that God has put in place. Your heart, you can't cheat God out of it. Your heart has to be right. But it's not so you can enrich yourself. If you think if that is how you're thinking, you either have a poverty mentality or you have a rich mentality. You don't have a wealth mentality. Wealth preserves for the next generation. So that's the attitude. It's exactly what you were talking about with you want to reach people. That's what you're thinking about. And if you ever put it into terms of, like if we were feeding hungry children, and that was our mission, of course you want more so you could feed more. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the things that I think people get confused with, because I always hear, and so if you don't, you have to start out with the right heart, the right mindset, but once you have that, you definitely give to get. It's just your reasons for getting are totally different. And not everybody can understand that.
Right.
But that conflict is why some people with the wrong mentality see the problems with the scriptures. Because they're thinking, oh, well, I'm going to give just to enrich myself personally. And one illustration, you said that, it's not yours. At one point in my life, I saw it that way too. God showed me, you're the truck driver, and you're delivering a payload. The payload is not yours. I came from a trucking company. If I were to stop on the route and just give the payload away to anybody I want, I'd probably get fired. But what the Lord told me is, I take really good care of my truck drivers.
Amen.
And you won't have to worry about running out.
Praise the Lord. All right, so as we're closing, these are all really great. I thank you for sharing all of these stories. And there could have been, And I know all of you, and we've talked about these issues before. It's like any of you could have shared innumerable other stories of what God's done through the power of giving. And really, it's just your whole lifestyle is giving. It's not, we're talking about finances, but really your lifestyle is one of giving, all of you. So when we close this, though, it's like, what advice would you give to people? So here we are. It's our church family and people watching online. What would you, in the area of giving, what was the one thing you really would like to be able to give to them, to be able to say to them?
Trust him. Trust him. He's your provider, you know. Speak to him, talk to him, and ask him, like, Lord, what is it that I might need you to work on? What is it that I might need to get rid of so that my heart is open to do what you want me to do? So I would just say, trust him. He loves you. He can see way farther than you ever can. Always remember that your situation may not look the way you want it to, but it may look exactly the way he needs it to look in that moment.
Amen. That's good. That's good. Judy, do you want to jump in or you want to wait? Okay. Billy, what would you say?
Well, with anything that's word-based, there's something called the Logos and the Rhema. Mm-hmm. The Logos is you pick the Bible up, you read the Bible, you go, yeah, that's good. Rhema is where the Holy Spirit gives you a revelation of what this means, how it applies to you, and it becomes a part of your DNA, so that no matter what happens, nobody could ever take that away from you. You have a revelation, a rhema of this scripture. So the first thing I would do is find scriptures on giving, and there's all kinds of books, there's all kinds of resources on the internet. It's just,
absolutely.
We're surrounded, we're swamped in material on the word regarding giving. Mm-hmm. I would ask Holy Spirit to give you the rhema, the revelation of what this really means to you, and then ask the Father, what is it, the seed that you want me to plant so that I can test you? Secondly, because I was raised in church and because I was raised a giver, it was so much easier for me to not only swim in those waters, but to actually become advanced in doing things that I didn't know anybody else did until I started doing it, and then I started meeting other people. Don't pass on your fear-based compromises to your children. Don't do it. It'll take them years to get over, to get to the very first base of the whole thing. Become an example to your children, an example to your grandchildren, and watch how they take what you have and just absolutely run with it. Mm-hmm. And you'll not only have answers to your prayers, you'll not only have an open window to heaven, but you will be rich in good works. And you'll also have the wealth behind it so that you can leverage it to an order of magnitude that God gets so much more credit and more glory out of your life than you could possibly if you were just going for survival.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's great.
I mean, Bible scholars over here. I'm just sort of nuts and bolts here.
What is it? We say you're just Miss Judy.
I'm just Miss Judy. Well, yeah. Okay. For some people, that's good. To other people, no. I have just given some money to my cousin for medical things. The way I did it, she had a Spanish word she told me that wasn't too nice, but it was okay, because I was determined to give this to her so that she has some comfort in getting her medical needs. So there are different ways, but all I want to say is go on this journey of giving with Jesus. Learn. Start small. When you get challenged, there's some folks here who go, you can talk to and go, oh, I just have a give it all moment. Open your hearts, because the returns are incredible. I will just leave with this one. When I was on a mission trip in Bosnia, I chose to give money for an incubator where in a war-torn area. And I want to tell you, the joy of knowing that there are some babies who lived because God told me to give.
Amen.
Is just phenomenal. So I just offer this to you. Find the giving spirit, and you will be returned with joy and purpose.
Amen. That's good. Good.
Everything.
Yeah, that's good. You know, God, there's no more money coming down from heaven. The money is all here. Okay, so he moves it. And he moves it through people like we have up here that have said, I surrender, and I'm willing to be used, and use these resources, not just money resources, all resources, into the places you need it. But I would say the two things, you know, considering only 5% of Christians, now that's tithe, so that's 10%. So it's a real low number, and it goes up slightly, but the total number is pretty low, okay? And I think people want to give, but they're afraid to give. So what I would say is, like everything, start with your desire. Generosity, or anything in your life, starts with the desire, not your feelings. Don't confuse your faith with your feelings, because it takes a while for the feelings to catch up with the faith. That's the first thing. So I've heard this many times from different people that I've listened to. If you want to give, but you just don't see, start praying to God, Lord, I want to give. And I heard what one pastor said one time. He says, I put in a pencil because I had nothing else to give. That's how poor we were. I put in a pencil. And by the time that day, somebody walked up and said, here's $20. And it was just interesting. So I think start out with the desire. And then I didn't make this one up. I was just reading this book. It's Poverty, Riches, and Wealth by Chris who?
That's good. Chris Vallotton.
Vallotton.
You know, we probably all pronounced it wrong,
Yeah.
but sorry, Chris.
But
You know.
so I want to give, this is one of the best books that I've ever read on being generous and being a giver. But he says, if you underestimate your ability to give, you will undermine your ability to receive. And that's really good. I read that this morning. I've read this a couple of times, and now I'm studying it, and I went, wow. That, and so start with your desires, because everybody can start with their desire. There's nobody so broke that they can't ask God for the desire and then watch him work.
Mm-hmm. So, I hope you had a good time this morning. I enjoyed this, and I just got some gems. I'm going to go turn around and watch this again, just because there were some really powerful things that were in here. For me personally, it's like we give, we love to give. That's one of the reasons I think I love Christmas so much. I just love being able to give gifts. So if you need to get on my Christmas list now, you want to go ahead and just go ahead and jump in. And I like what all of them had to say. It's like, start. Yeah, I someday. It's like, no, don't wait for someday. Start with now. Even if you've got to start with a pencil or whatever it is, it's like, Lord, give it out of joy. We talked about joy this morning. Give it out of faith. Lord, may ask you to step up and do something that you's like, oh no, it's got to be God. And just wait. I mean, for both of them, several of us, we talked about, we waited. We didn't just jump in impulsively. It's like we waited and we knew, listen, God can speak to you. And he's not going to just give up. So if it's him, you just wait. He'll confirm it, and you just step out in faith. And out of this, what you're going to get is freedom.
Amen.
That really is, to me, that's a big part of what we were talking about this morning. It's like, it's freedom. There's such freedom in being able to give and to know that God still will be your provider. And the joy of being able to give as you give to people, that's freedom. That's real freedom. It's like so many of us, I think, with our Christian walk, we get stuck with where we are. We get stuck in this mindset. It's like, well, we just have to be workers. And then part of it is like, I'm going to step on some toes again this morning, but some of us, like, we think somehow or another, if you're rich, you can't love God. It's like that. Nothing's farther from the truth. You know, and you're all rich. It's like, oh, no, I don't have any money. You are right now. You have a Father who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. So he'll provide for you and he'll bless you. So you start with that desire. You just say, Lord, I'm going to start and start small, but God's going to bless. He's going to honor it. And you're going to find yourself becoming a bigger and bigger giver. And there's such joy, all of them to say that, in being able to do that. All right, so let's take a step of faith this morning. Now, I'm not going to take another offering. There's, oh, here he goes. We're going to get another offering. No. I'm not going to do that. I'm not. But I will ask you to ask him, Lord, what do you want me to do? And it could be that there's giving. There, you can give in the back if you want to. But it could be somebody today that you'll see, that you'll be able to give to. It could be somebody tomorrow. Start now and start listening. Lord, what do you want me to do? I want to become that kind of giver. And you know what? It will affect everything else you do. You will become a giver in everything else you do. Like what we said about here with everybody up here. These are not just like people that give and they're done. You know, they throw money and they're done. It's like these are people that really have developed a lifestyle of giving. They'll do anything for you. They're all my friends, and they, at any point, every single one of them have jumped to us when we've needed help. And that's a giver. That really, truly is a giver. So let's pray together. Lord, as we come forward, as we really just end the service together, God, we're asking for you to help us to take that step of faith, to take the step of faith, whatever it might be, to do something new that we've never done before, to try something that we've never tried before. Lord, we want to be people of faith. We want to be people that are givers. We want the freedom and the joy of being able to do that. So Lord, speak to us now in what you would have us do. What would you have us do, and where would you have us go? Lord, there's somebody right now that's in need, and we want to be a blessing to them. So help us to do that. And even more, Lord, teach us to be givers. First, God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. He gave the very best that he had. So, Lord, teach us to be that kind of follower of you, to give the very best that we can give. In Jesus' name.